urban planners, we have developers, we have community leaders. We also have representation from TCHC. So we have a really great diversity of voices. Okay, really great diversity of voices here to provide you some examples of how these different spaces within the city building industry can help us guide towards more inclusive city building where we can develop wealth within marginalized communities so that are not being left behind, but they are being brought and they are part of this progress and development. So my name is Cheryl Case. I'm the founder and executive director of City Planning. We are a nonprofit organization that implements a human rights-based approach to community planning. And what that means is we prioritize and center marginalized communities in our work, making sure that these communities are able to benefit from development, including through access to jobs, seeing affordable housing, being prioritized, and also community spaces. It is my strong belief that this should be normalized within our industry, and I think this community benefits movement is a big part of being able to achieve that goal, right? Because everyone here in this room, our initiative is to ensure that everybody is included and that we feel like we belong, and decent work is a huge part of that. Without that resource, you can't meet your own needs, you can't meet your community needs, and you start to question, what am I doing here? So that's a little bit about myself. Right? So we have some wonderful speakers, so I wanted to leave time for them to share with you all about what they're doing to achieve this goal of decent work and inclusive economies. So we first have William Mendez. He's Director of Program Delivery Development Division at Toronto Community Housing Corporation. William?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, Will Mendez, great to be here. I don't know if are we doing presentations as well?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly just give an overview of Toronto Community Housing for those who are not familiar with TCHC. So TCHC is a social housing provider. We're actually the second largest in North America, largest in Canada. We house approximately 110,000 plus people across 2,200 buildings in Toronto, and there's 60,000 households that actually live within those 2,200 buildings, and most of our buildings are 50 years older, or 50 years or more in age, and we have been revitalizing our housing stock over the last 15 years, and there's a lot of community benefits and social procurement that we've been able to leverage through that process. But just a little bit about the people that live in TCHC. Our average annual household per family is about $15,000 per household, okay? So that is well below the Toronto average. So community benefits, community economic development programs are very, very important to us and very, very important to the people living in social housing. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to be really quick about this. So I just wanted to highlight, we have 8 revitalization sites, okay? If they're on the map, Regent Park, Alexandra Park, 250 Davenport, Don Somerville, Leslie Nymark, Allenbury Gardens, Fir Grove, and Lawrence Heights are major sites that we've engaged in leveraging social procurement, community benefits, or community economic development. We've called them different terms over the course of the last decade, but these are the sites that we've been able to leverage our partnership with contractors and with developers to bring opportunities to community. And we'll get more into that later on. Next slide, please. And just a quick overview of like how we actually work. So we have values within our division that we want to address oppression, equity issues, anti-Black and Indigenous racism. We want to work through partnerships to maximize the benefits of revitalization, and we are very much focused on social, economic, and environmental sustainability, okay? Our goals are to create vibrant and inclusive communities, achieve design and construction excellence, and secure opportunities for tenants living in social housing, okay? And that will be it for me for now.
All right, thank you, William. So, in speaking about addressing systemic anti-Black racism and maximizing the benefits for those who are the most marginalized, I think about the work of Tridel, right? You guys are doing a lot of great work to support folks getting into development and into construction. So our next speaker is Maggie Halls. He's the Senior Manager of Corporate Impact at Tridel.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Oh, it works. Exciting. Okay, hi everybody. I see some familiar faces through the audience in the other session. So thank you very much for Cheryl, the introduction. So I do also have a few slides, but I promise I will rip through them because the meat and potatoes is in the discussion that we're going to have. So if folks in the room aren't familiar with Tridel, we're actually coming up on our 90-year anniversary next year. We have constructed over 89,000 homes across the Greater Toronto Area. And we are a member of the Tridel group of companies. So that factors in a little bit later into the conversation, but we are one of several companies within the Tridel group, ranging from construction management to property management, senior living facilities, realty, rental, all that good stuff. Next slide, please. Okay, so what I want to just quickly highlight, because Will, mentioned that there are a few sites that Toronto Community Housing is doing. Tridel is the partner for three revitalization neighborhoods: Alexander Park, Phase 1 and 2, Leslie Nymark, which is coming up in completion, and then the final 2 phases in Regent Park, Phases 4 and 5. And most of what we have learned, next slide, please, just a quick visual representation. And much of what we have learned and the programs that we have internally that have been, taken up by different departments and functions, our leadership, top-down approach, have been learned as a result of the experience that we have gleaned in Toronto community housing neighborhoods. So that experience has been invaluable. Next slide. Oh, maybe not. Oh, yeah, we're good. So I just want to take you through a couple of programs and initiatives that have really unfurled through this experience. So next slide, please. So one that we're really excited to talk about is the first ever reconciliation action plan that our company has put out in June of 2023. This was done in collaboration with a Indigenous owned and run consulting firm, as well as input from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And it outlines a number of commitments that we're hoping to achieve in the coming years to further our efforts in reconciliation. Will mentioned social procurement. It is an absolute delight to see that number of different people within Tridel are coming to my team, the social impact team, and saying, hey, we're having a lunch over here, or hey, I'm hoping to get a photographer, or hey, I'm exploring some graphic design services. Do you have any vendors? And the proof is in the pudding. We went from, I think last year we had about 25,000 in social procurement that you could classify it as, to this year over 450,000. So again, it's when you think about the amount of money that is being spent in the development industry, 450 still isn't really all that much, but that's a huge jump, and that's just a change in consciousness of being aware that there are other vendors that we can pick from and that we can support. The other example, and I'll go a bit more into community outreach and engagement, but strategic social investments. So choosing to invest in grassroots nonprofits and charitable organizations in the communities where we build so that we can support, the great work that's happening on the ground. We have 4 core pillars, but the one that we really focus on is sustainable wealth creation. So working with those agencies that are going to have those wraparound supports so that when folks are ready for employment, they can come to our employment and community partnerships manager and our employment and career coach, so that they can be funneled and directed to jobs that suit their experience, their needs, their desires, and their life skills. I'm going to do a little spotlight on the Partners in Community program in a second. So next slide, please. I just quickly want to talk about how important community engagement is. If you are doing something in a vacuum, it will never work. So much of what we have learned, and I do want to call out a specific example of Miguel, I don't know if he's here from Regent Park, who consistently says, what are you doing to support folks who have mental health or addiction issues? And at the time I was like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. And so it caused us to look into sort of our employee and assistance plan, but then also to develop a training program for all of our people managers managers so that they know how to have conversations and create safe spaces for folks who are experiencing crisis, or to help them identify maybe someone is in crisis, but they're not, quite coming out of their shell. So it's the community engagement, it's the listening aspect that really makes these programs sing. And then one final thing I do want to point out is the Tridel Community Works. A big thing, a barrier, I would say, that exists for connecting folks to employment is we don't know where to find them. Where are these people? So what we wanted to do, and beyond sort of our relationship with Toronto Community Housing for getting connected to folks, was creating a dedicated platform so they could come directly to us. We have an intake form, an intake process. We put, different events, different initiatives that we've been partnering with residents and community-led organizations on there. And it's been hugely successful in helping us boost that pipeline of available talent. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna go faster. So our Partners in Community program, this is a dedicated schedule into all of our awarded contracts that now requires all of our trade suppliers, consultants to participate in community benefits. And it can be something as simple as having a phone call with someone who's interested in a career, all the way up to hiring someone full-time. And we've worked out a fun sort of incentive structure to work with our trades and to gamify it so that people are excited by community benefits and they don't see it as a burden. Because truthfully, and we'll talk about that in the discussion, Will and I were talking about it earlier, that some are sort of like, how does community benefits work? Is it going to slow me down at all? Or is this going to be something that I can really, get my hands into and make work? So this is a really exciting program that has been in effect since last January. And just seeing employers' faces light up when we say, and I think Fatima Saya in the previous session said, there's like a 70,000 person labor gap that we're about to come into, contact with. And when you say, we're a no-cost recruiter for you, the employers are like, you do what? You bring me people? So this is a really exciting way for us to help facilitate that. Okay, next slide. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Bolt Foundation, this is the foundation we're the principal and founding sponsor of, and they work directly with youth to put them into job shadowing, career exploration, pre-apprenticeship programs.
Sorry, can we have the slides changed, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So,
Thanks, Cheryl. Good eye. So I really encourage you to check out the Bolt Foundation. They're on Instagram, they're on social media, boltonline.org. Next slide, please. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's been a big thing that's evolved from our work with Toronto Community Housing. And it ranges from creating safe spaces for people to report things if they see something, having a multi-year action plan across a number of pillars, all the way to, how do we actually change our policies internally? And then how do we make sure that people who are from equity-seeking groups have a way to sort of, check us and check our work. And then the final slide, I promise I'm done, is our collaborations within the industry. The power of the construction industry cannot be understated. And if you want to get something done, going to organizations like Build and ResCon are amazing ways to advance cross-industry level action. If you're going from developer to developer, your action's going to be really limited. If you go to these larger industry associations, you're going to see the changes happen on a broader scale for bigger developers like Tridel all the way to the smaller contractors. And then the final one is just we have a new partnership with GenAir, an appliance company in Toronto Metropolitan University, and that's to advance careers in the design industry for racialized and Indigenous folks. So that's it. That's it for me. I'm sorry for a long-winded thing, but there's so much to talk about. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, okay. So good morning, everyone. If it's still morning, no, not quite. Just crossed the threshold into afternoon. Big thank you to the Toronto Community Benefits Network for hosting this summit today and for inviting me to be a part of it. I'm super honored. I've been interested in the work of TCBN for basically as long as I've been in and around the urban planning space in Toronto. I'm from Hamilton originally, so I understand and value the role that good jobs play in supporting a vibrant and dynamic city. And I have a lot of respect for the work that everyone in this room does. Today, I'm an urban planning consultant, as Cheryl was saying. I work on development projects as well as policy work in Toronto and the larger GTHA. I work, next slide. Oh, I guess you can go two ahead. Thanks, that's my nice little title slide. My company is called SVN Architects and Planners. We're an integrated design practice. We're based here in Toronto, but we also have studios in Mexico City and Vancouver. We're a team of architects, planners, urban designers, and landscape architects, and we're working on some of the most interesting and important projects in our region today. Next slide, please. I did just want to do a quick educational piece. I know we've been talking a lot about community benefits, and I just wanted to bring in another definition of community benefits, which those in the planning and development space use. And this is unfortunate that we have the same terminology for something that's slightly different and is quite specifically defined in the provincial legislation. So some of you may be familiar with Section 37, which formerly was referred to as heightened density bonusing, whereby a developer would put forward a request to the city for additional height and density on a project and offer in exchange some form of community benefit. And so these community benefits were typically in the form of community space within the development. So like some of the examples that you see on the slide here, or a cash contribution to a local community priority in the area where the development is taking place. In 2020, the province of Ontario changed this structure for negotiating, site-by-site specific community benefits to the community benefits charge, which is now a sort of standardized charge based on the value of the land, and that goes towards funding similar things, so community infrastructure, putting money into these same sorts of things, essentially the needs that are defined in the local community or needs that are going to be generated through the additional growth in the area. This CBC is not just applying now to developments that are looking for more height and density, but it applies to anything with over 5 stories or more than 10 units. CBCs can be used to fund a variety of things, including new community space, affordable housing, park improvements. All of these are candidates for funding through CBCs. So just wanted to put that out there. In the planning world, we talk about community benefits in specifically in that way, and there is some overlap. But now I'm going to be talking more about your version of community benefits and how we can look for those types of employment opportunities through the planning process. So next slide. Thank you. SVN was the planning consultant for the Eglinton Crosstown study, which was called Eglinton Connects. This work completed in 2014. The study established the parameters for built form, public realm, and new public open spaces along the 17-kilometer Eglinton LRT corridor. The planning team engaged with over 5,000 people through a series of consultation events, stakeholder meetings, and surveys. So that was an over a 2-year process. And if those of you in this room are engaged on the Eglinton corridor, you may have participated at that time. And this kind of goes back to what some of my colleagues were saying, where it's really important early on to design an outreach and engagement strategy that is tailored to the local population and meets people where they are. For Eglinton Connects, our team, which I was not a part of, this was before my time, but we went out to local businesses door to door along Eglinton. We also set up displays in the lobbies of places of worship and apartment complexes to make sure that we were reaching people where they are to talk about the issues that matter to them. We built on some of these relationships established through Eglinton Connects for our work on the Golden Mile Secondary Plan, which was the land use planning study that sort of set the stage for revitalization of the Golden Mile area in association with, of course, the Crosstown LRT. Various community organizations were mobilized and participated in that process. And I believe that sort of engagement and coming together really set the stage for the economic development strategy that's being led by the Golden Mile Impact Network and the United Way today. So returning to my point, I really don't think we can plan for inclusive local economies unless we know what the talents, needs, and ambitions of the communities that we are working in are. And so there's an opportunity for community organizations, such as those here today, to participate early in the planning process to ensure that economic inclusion is prioritized throughout the full build out of these areas. Thank you. Read my mind. Not quite done. Oh, just switch my slide. Yeah. Many of you will know that we're on this mandate to expand transit through the region, and it's so long overdue. But a big piece of this is supporting that transit infrastructure through the introduction of greater density and mixed-use communities at these transit nodes. So this slide is a project that I've been working on right now, and the challenge with, in my opinion, mixed-use development is that we're often finding the same sort of things replicated at grade. So that you have your dry cleaner, you have your Shoppers Drug Mart, you have these sort of somewhat sterile locations that aren't like really engaged with the culture of the area, that aren't creating a vibrant public life on the street. So I want to talk about this project because we're just in the early planning stages. This is a project with Hallmark, who's the developer. It's a site located around Caledonia and Eglinton, adjacent to the new Caledonia LRT station, or Caledonia LRT and GO RER station. The site's currently home to the Canada Goose parka manufacturing facility, which employs 400 people. We're working through planning approvals for a master plan, which will include around 2,000 units and 300,000 square feet of non-residential floor space. It's really important to Hallmark and to the development team to create employment opportunities through the provision of spaces that meet the needs, skills, and passions of the people who are already in this community, who are already working in this community. Hallmark has held a number of public engagement sessions prior to any submission to the city. We haven't submitted yet still, and we're still out there listening and asking, like, what are some of the spaces that folks would like to see here? What are some of the uses that we could bring in to really animate that what we call the ground plane, basically the street level of the development. First and foremost, there will be, or there's hope that Canada Goose will stick around on site. Hallmark is designing a tailor-made new production facility as part of this mixed-use development, so that hopes to keep those 400 jobs in Toronto and on the site. There's also opportunities through that ground plane for new light manufacturing, studio production type spaces, thinking about food and beverage production uses, as well as ability to tie in some of these spaces to the larger Castlefield Design District, which is just to the north of the site. We envision this project as an economic catalyst, pairing it with obviously the investment in transit, and of course, it's right adjacent to the Beltline Trail, which is where we've borrowed the name for the project for, and combined, these projects are gonna improve opportunity and connectivity for this area.
Amazing, thank you, Kelly. So there are, urban planners that, may go to the Ontario Provincial Planning Institute or Ontario Provincial Planning and be regulated as planners, but there's other ways that people can plan, right? All of us in the room who are engaging with community benefits and looking at how can development meet and support community needs, that's planning work as well. And so we have we have Anna K. Brown from the Community Benefits Framework Coordinator at Jane and Finch Community and Family Center. This is a neighborhood that is able to benefit from the work that has been done around transit-oriented development and the planning of the LRT station in Eglinton. And now, we're seeing the next generation of community organizing around this development. And so, Anna K. Brown, I'd love to hear from you. What is the work that Jane and Finch is doing to ensure that community is able to develop wealth and establish pathways for decent work?
All right. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Anna K. Brown, and I live in Jane and Finch community for the last 15 years. I also work in the Jane and Finch community. I am currently raising my family in the Jane and Finch community. The Jane and Finch community is going through a transition. We are seeing major redevelopment due to the Finch West LRT. With that, there comes opportunity, economic opportunities, but if those are not leveraged correctly for community, oftentimes the current residents there are not the ones benefiting from these economic opportunities that are oftentimes coming into the community. We can see a little bit of that with the Finch West subway, so it brings me into a little bit of the work. It started in 2019 through some of the funding that we got through United Way in terms of how to, You can go on to the next slide, my apology. All right, so the Jane and Finch Center is a multi-service agency. We offer from community planning and development to financial literacy, senior, youth programs, a little bit of everything we have done. The major project that we're working on right now is the Black Creek Fair Economy project. As I said, it was born in 2019 through the funding that we received from United Way for 2 years to look into economic opportunities in the Jane and Finch community, and that is to look at increasing local hiring at York University. Sorry, next slide. Also developing a community benefit framework and also just improving coordination between local leaders and partners in the community. Next slide. So the Jane and Finch, so now we're also in our second phase of the Black Creek Fair Economy, which is also being funded by Metcalf. And this looks directly at using some of the findings out of the community benefit framework around local hiring, which I'll talk a little bit about. So in the Jane and Finch Community Benefit Framework, here are the 8 different sections that came from outreach, different community members, stakeholders, partners, just looking at different ideas and strategies and what people wanted to focus on, from community engagement, youth engagement, community oversight and accountability, affordable housing, local hiring, small businesses and entrepreneurship, community spaces, food access and production. So those were some of the 8 different sections that are in our community benefits. So for the local hiring strategy, as I said, we're now starting to use some of the different information out of the community benefit framework that we've created, and we're looking beyond construction jobs. Many folks don't necessarily want to go into construction jobs. So we're looking at York University, who usually have a plethora of different job opportunities, and we've been working with them since 2017 to create a local hiring strategy and implement it. If anyone knows, York is a huge infrastructure, and also the bureaucracy is deep. Also, the next thing is the Finch West LRT maintenance facility. So with the Finch West LRT, it also has a maintenance facility that is in the heart of Jane and Finch. We're looking at how can we increase local hiring there through the 3 partners who will be operating that spot, from Mosaic Maintenance, Metrolinx, and TTC. So I'm just gonna give a high overview. We can go on to, let's jump to Anchor York U very quickly. As I said, we've been working with York University through a specific program called Anchor York U to increase local hiring at York University. I'm gonna jump to Humber Meadows, which I'll share now for Humber Meadows. It is a long-term care facility that started to be built right in the heart of the pandemic. So one day we woke up and we have another long-term care facility in our community. They didn't have to do any consultation for this. So what we had to do was, for about maybe 2 years, we've been working with Infrastructure Ontario, just trying to figure out who was going to operate this facility. Sent many different emails. Finally, of January of 2023, the director of Humber Meadows finally reached out to us. We had a meeting within a week to figure out the different type of jobs that will be available. How can we work together to get community some of these jobs, or at least to the interview process. So we did some pop-up sessions in March of 2023, where we were able to get at least over 100 people who were working in long-term care facility. I wanna say about an estimated 30% of our 4 main postal codes are hired at Humber Meadows right now. The next one is the Finch West MSF. Sorry, Finch West MSF. Sorry, the next slide. All right, yes. So back to the maintenance facility. This has been our hardest struggle into getting TTC, Mosaic Maintenance, or Mosaic Transit, to have conversation around looking at local hiring. A lot of people talk about diverse hiring, but what about also diverse and local hiring? Here you are building infrastructures in communities, especially all of the communities that we have looked at are very highly marginalized, racialized communities. And we need to start talking about how these developments directly impact those folks. And usually, as I said, these are not benefiting them economically, socially, or in any capacity. So when it goes back to this, I will share many of the challenges that we have had with around the assumptions that community is not worthy of these jobs. There's a lot of preconceived notions about who they are, what kind of skills and values that they have. There's also, there's a lot of short-term employment opportunities that are usually being offered. And we also there's a lot of you gotta provide stats to show that the community really have these skill sets to be able to give the jobs. As I said, also the bureaucracy of how a lot of these institutions are frowned upon make it very, very difficult for you to navigate. So I'm gonna give, for instance, in conversations with TTC, and don't worry, I'm gonna wrap up very quickly, Cheryl, is they talk about doing diverse hiring, but when we said, well, here's the facility that you guys are going to be a part of, how can we do local hiring there? They said, well, we do diverse hiring, but we don't do local hiring. So I said, well, doesn't diverse and local go together? If you're going to be building different facilities into community, how can we also ensure that the folks who are diverse in that community can work in the facility? So these are just some of the challenges. Some of the lessons that we've learned is also knowing that we are not an employment agency. We're trying to connect folks to the folks who are doing employment, but also reach out to our community partners who are in employment to also realize whatever there's a service bridge or some of the soft skills that people need to have, how can we help them to get into training? And we're also trying to get ahead of knowing that if there's an infrastructure that's coming in, and these are like the 50 different type of jobs that are coming in, to get community ready to be able to get into these jobs. But oftentimes the jobs are ready in June of 2024, and you're not gonna know until May what these type of jobs are, and for you to be able to get community ready. So I'm just gonna wrap it up right there. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, I appreciated that you mentioned that, you're not an employment agency. Your job is to bring the connections together. And that, reminds me of what the MPP from Scarborough Guildwood mentioned, right? We need to be building this network. We all have something to contribute to building this grander vision and seeing it being realized. And so I see that it's, we have about 5 minutes left. I wanted to make a note also, the other point you mentioned about how these transit infrastructure is going through neighborhoods that are very marginalized, right? We look at not just in Toronto, not just in Hamilton, we're seeing this also in Ottawa and Kitchener-Waterloo, and even in the New York region. These LRTs, these infrastructures being built in neighborhoods that have the highest rates of renters. Oftentimes you see higher rates of racialized communities and also Indigenous communities as well. So the most marginalized communities are at risk of being further marginalized when we don't do work such as what the folks on this panel have been bringing up. So with the few moments that we have left, I would like to open it up to you all. If there's one question, we have one question we can ask the group. Okay, you stuck your hand up real quick.
I know that TCH, when you involve social enterprise, you make sure that they're hiring right from within your buildings there. So I'm wondering if you could sort of share some of the learning about that could apply to GTHA.
So through the process of actually selecting the partners that we're going to redevelop or construct the site, we have evolved over the last 10 years to now introduce actual targets or the priorities of the local community in the RFP processes, the request for proposals when you're selecting your contractors or developers. In the past, when we first started out, we would select the developer and then negotiate, a community economic development or an employment target, et cetera, which never really yielded the best result, because at that point the developer or contractor didn't know what they're getting themselves into. So understanding what the community priorities are, the local priorities, is very, very important. Understanding the training needs, employment needs, and get that holistic approach. And even the social needs of the community is important, because when you're selecting a developer or a contractor to work with you over a long period of time, it is not just a contract. It is, we're building a relationship, we're building bridges, we're building partnerships and collaboration, and we need to ensure that we're selecting the right type of for-profit or not-profit entity that's willing to engage in this. Because if they're not, at least you're being upfront. This is what we're looking for. We're not just looking for you to rebuild our housing. We're looking for you to invest in people. We're looking for you to invest in the social infrastructure that supports community development. And so those are some of the things that we learned. And I think the people that are doing business with us currently really respect that approach, because they know what they're getting into. But to the point of realizing what the opportunities are coming in the near future. You mentioned you won't know until May of 2024 about the opportunities for employment in June 2024. That is not fair. And developers and contractors and whoever we're doing business with need to be a little bit more forthcoming, or they need to really work hard in understanding what the labor needs and opportunities are, so that way community has time to organize. And one of the things that we've learned is it's not just about employment, and we can talk more afterwards perhaps, hopefully. It's about training opportunities, it's about scholarships, it's about investments in facilities, and we're talking about the workforce development to get to employment is needed. It's not just the employment opportunities is not enough. You need to invest in people, so that way they can secure the opportunities, and especially in long-term projects that are 5, 10, 15 years, as in the revitalizations in TCHC. A person who is 15 years old now will be 30 years old when this is completed, for argument's sake. So having opportunities for people to engage in the process and economically throughout the entire period is important. So you can invest in a young person now who's then going to be a benefactor 10 years down the road. So keeping that in mind is very important. Another thing, sorry, just before we wrap up, is there's employment and scholarships and training, which is very important, but we want to talk about sustainable economic development. And this is where, what are the people who are benefiting from financially from these projects? What are they going to do to continuously invest in retail and local economy moving forward? And how do the local businesses, and for us, the tenants that live in the communities benefit from those businesses, and how could they actually open their own? So social procurement is very important. The introduction of micro retail or community retail is something that we're really interested in, partnering with many different groups to bring into reality for the communities, because it's one person can't do it all. So we need a collaborative approach to create that collective impact around that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline. That was an excellent response. So we'll have one more question. You guys seem very engaged. You don't want to get up? Let's do one last question, and then we will go for lunch.
Thank you. I recognize with appreciation the efforts that have been made already by the industry, drivers, and the community benefits as groups for decent work to obtain shall look at productivity, remuneration, and safety for both the working people who have participated and the environment. My question is whether we have, in the experience of the panel, already found ways of linking the safety of the working people and the environment to deliver this decent work. Because it is a multidisciplinary thing. We may look at the benefits at the level of jobs, but when it comes to the environment, the community is at a loss. And if we come to things like industrial peace, which is the greatest benefit, people in industry alone may be at a loss. So my question is, in your experience, has anybody found or come across these multidisciplinary demands on our community benefits agreements?
Yeah. Well, I think I can respond to that in some degree. Just ACB Planning as being a organization that is led by racialized, Black-led, being myself as a leader. And my team is also very racialized. We have a very safe workspace for staff, like in terms of microaggressions, like that type of threat doesn't exist in the same way that you might find in other white-led, more legacy organizations who have been around for decades. And so I can comment on that matter in terms of creating a safe workspace for the people who work at our organization. I think, Maggie, you'd be really great to speak about, you mentioned some DEI programs that you guys have, and also other matters of safety. I would love to answer that question.
Sure. So a quick example that I can give is through our collaboration with the Bolt Foundation, they have a program known as job shadowing. And this is an opportunity for folks, it's almost like an extended interview period. It's also an opportunity for them to say, holy smokes, I don't like high-rise condominiums. I have a fear of heights. So from a safety perspective, sometimes that 1 to 2 week period where they're able to actually be on a job site and say and shadow a number of different trades and say, this is a good fit for me, this is not a good fit for me. This is the slot, this is where I want to be. So that program is really helpful in the sense that it gets people exposed and to understand the actual realities of working on a construction site. And safety is a huge component, especially in the high-rise industry. Another thing that I want to speak to as well is our team does quite a bit of work in supporting the folks who are coming through our pipeline, who are coming through the Regent Park, the Alex Park, the Leslie Nymark, in ensuring that, yes, they understand the current realities of construction and sort of Building Up does a great job and the Hammerheads program, they do a great job in saying these are the realities of construction. And frankly, I wish I could say it was, as progressive as this group here, but construction is not quite there yet. So what we try to really focus on is when we do facilitate placements, particularly for folks who are racialized, is that they are being matched up with employers who have a similar mindset of inclusivity, of belonging, of accommodating, folks. A great example is someone who needs time for prayer during the day-to-day operation. So making sure that the trade creates that space for them to be able to pray. So that's what we're noticing in the way of, that psychological safety, and then the physical safety is just really being closely connected with trades, that they're aware that the needs of the workforce is different than, what it was maybe 50 years ago. So I hope that answers part of your question, but that's sort of how we're trying to address it on both the physical and psychological side.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, William, Kelly, and Anna K. Brown. You've provided a lot of great stories and I hope inspiration to the group, so if we can give them all a round of applause.